Welcome to the Queer Confidence Podcast, the podcast to help you become your most confident queer self. I'm your host, he, she, they, Coach Alex Ray, and I haven't always been this confident. In fact, I used to be super insecure. And through this show, I want to share with you what's worked for me, my clients, and my guests so that you can become more confident. Hello, my unicorns. Oh my goodness. I'm thrilled for today's episode. I always say that. And then I always call myself out for saying it. Anyway, I'm very thrilled to share with you today's podcast guest. He has just some awesome insight around shame in particular and queerness and all the different, I feel like different facets of being queer and different aspects of how it interacts with his life. And you're going to just love it. Just strap in or strap on and get ready to hear from today's guest, Chuck. Chuck, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
You're welcome. This is a very scrambly intro because I'm like, we are talking about so many things. It's like almost overwhelming, but like really fun. So,
well, that's why, just the shorthand is I just tell people I'm the world's most interesting podcast guest because I'm every kind of weird and I'm very, very proud of it.
There you go. Which is why I wanted to have you on the show because you reached out to me on Instagram and you're like, hey, I would love to be on your podcast. And I was like, okay, but like, what are you going to talk about? Right. And then I was like, oh, yes, sir.
What am I not going to talk about?
Come on. Get on here. Book now. I want to hear from you.
It's been so fun to see your like the way that you celebrate yourself online too, and to just like feel really inspired by your ownership. And so that's why I thought having a conversation with you would be really fun.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And I also love that we don't know each other all that well. We know each other a little bit online, but like this is going to be a really fun conversation where I'm like genuinely showing up with so much curiosity and so much like I don't even know where we're gonna go. It's gonna be a great discussion. Which is why I stumbled through my words on the intro. So you ready, y'all? So Chuck, please go for it. Go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners today. Tell them a little bit about who the hell you are.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I'm technically incarnated as a human being, but I don't really feel like a normal person. And I used to really like be embarrassed about that and hide about that. And then I sort of started to come to understand words for my experience, like non-binary, autistic, and ADHD, or I just started to understand that there are other people who have experiences similar to mine, and I'm not just like a singular weirdo. I do have a strange cocktail of a lot of different kinds of experiences that usually I think we're taught to be ashamed of or hide. But I have always been sort of like an unrepentantly, annoyingly obvious outsider, which is why I got beat up a lot as a kid. But like as an adult, like people don't beat me up anymore and no one can make me shut up. So I'm just going to be proudly strange.
I love it.
I'm a trans guy. I'm a solo parent. I'm a mental health and accessibility advocate, shame destroyer, world's most interesting podcast guest, amateur entomologist, you name it. I'm so curious about everything in the world and I want to know everything. And I've lived a lot in my 32 years and I intend to have the best autobiography ever. So that's just a short encapsulation of what I'm here to do.
I love it. Best biography ever. Yep. I can see that.
I'm working for it. I really am.
You really are. You are having the experiences for it. That's for sure. Okay. So I'm really curious because as we were kind of prepping for the show, you shared that with all of these things that you are supposed to be ashamed of, that you aren't. And what a magical ability. Tell our listeners a little bit more about this.
Yeah. So this is something I've really kind of grown into in the last year. I've been sort of framing it as like my brand of autism, does not give me the social framework of, I don't know how to tell a lie. And so it's like, if you ask me point blank what I think or what I did last night, like I'm gonna tell you, even if it was like really kinky and gay. Like if you
Mm,
asked, like I'll just tell you. Like I don't have that mechanism in my brain that gives me pause that says like, is this appropriate, or like is this person going to judge me? I just sort of
yeah.
just tell the truth all the time, and that's weird, but also it's kind of my superpower. And it really allows me to cut
Mm,
through a lot of things in my corporate job. Like I'm not shy about asking questions about why we make organizational decisions with people who are C-level, VP level. I just ask them, like, why is this like this? And if I don't agree
mm.
with them, I'll say, I think we should consider this. And I guess I just like part of it too is that I don't really believe in power dynamics that I don't consent to. And so it's like, I don't care if you're the most powerful man in the world or not. Like you're just a guy, and I'm just going to tell you what I think. And yeah, that's sort of carved a weird path for me that's been kind of fun.
I fucking love that. Also, I love how you are speaking of autism in a way of empowerment and that it is truly a superpower. I
Mhm.
think that right there is like the number one shame killer when we take anything that other people tell us we're supposed to be ashamed about, or maybe we've even carried shame about these things in the past.
Mhm.
And then we're like, no, but how is this a blessing?
Mhm.
How is this a strength? I remember coaching someone on this around their ADHD,
Mhm.
and they were like, but what do you mean it's a superpower? And I was like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot it took me several years to get to that point, but now I'm like, what a freaking blessing.
Right. Because it's like if you apply me with my ADHD brain to the right problem, I will literally destroy any neurotypical person at that task. Like if you
Right.
want me to find what is inefficient about your product design, I will find that.
Mm-hmm.
And but if you want me to like uh do other things, I will fail miserably. And I will be open about that. I'll be like, you know what? There's going to be a lot of friction there for me. I'm going to need some accountability. I need someone to sit with me to get it done because I promise
Mm,
I will not do it alone. So it's like also
mm,
destroying the shame around my weaknesses. Or like the I would say like the balance of like I do have these strengths from my ADHD, but I also need these accommodations. And if this is a disability informed workplace, then I'm going to need you to provide those accommodations.
mm.
And they do.
Yeah, okay, I freaking love that because you're so self-aware in it and it's just not a problem anymore because you're open to talking about it. You haven't made it a problem for yourself in your own mind. So tell us a
And I
little more
already know the
like,
solution too.
yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
so tell us a little more of how you got to that because I know there's someone listening today that's like, excuse me, what are you talking about? Like, how did you make that leap?
I think it's helpful that I spent a lot of time out of the corporate world and kind of anti-corporate, and now I'm in the corporate world, especially at this time where DE&I is like the buzzword of the year, diversity,
Mm,
equity, and inclusion. So every single company in the world right now wants to look good on paper in terms of how they're meeting people of color, queer people, and disabled people. And so you can publicly hold them accountable for that. You can say, hi, I have this disability, if you feel comfortable disclosing, which I do, and I'm happy to do for other people who don't. It's part of it is that I have no shame, so I don't mind sort of pushing the envelope forward for people who don't feel comfortable disclosing. So like I'll say for anyone with auditory sensitivity issues, we need to keep this in mind for all hands meetings. Or it's sort of an awareness of the fact that businesses are motivated to have really good visibility on their efforts to be accommodating to marginalized people. So you can hold them accountable and they will gladly throw all the money and resources in the world at the opportunity to look good. So if you present them with an opportunity to look good, they're going to support you. And they're not going to be like, you gross, you have blah, blah, blah. Like, yuck. Like that would be really embarrassing for them if they did that. So it's like I'm giving them an opportunity to look good by giving me an accommodation. And then other people don't even have to ask for it because I already did it for us.
mm, love that. I really, yes, amazing. Okay, so then what about also overcoming overcoming our own shame about our own differences? What's really worked for you?
I think it's been a long time coming for me. There was a lot of time, especially early in my diagnoses, that I sort of felt like I deserved to suffer, or that I was fated to suffer.
Mm,
Um, and I think it really took community and becoming well resourced and witnessed and loved in my weakness. Like I have over the last year recognized that I have a really severe auditory processing disorder where all kinds of sounds will give me panic attacks. And I used to run away and hide when I had those panic attacks. But now I have a small daughter. And when she's very loud or like hits a certain toy a certain way, it will cause that panic attack. And instead of having a breakdown or hiding, my roommates are there, my lovers are there, witnessing me, loving me, holding my hand to help me calm down and regulate. And so it's really been a matter of like, it's really hard to be witnessed when you're not having a good time, but being witnessed there took away the shame, which then actually made me have fewer panic attacks. Because I was afraid of being witnessed so much that it was whipping me up into more of a panic attack. And actually being forced effectively to be witnessed, bare, naked, vulnerable, and be loved by these people has really given me the fuel to own it publicly. Because even if I lost my job or lost everything, I have my community and they're not going to let me die, honestly.
Wow. Okay. So, like, being willing to actually let other people see you as you are, and practicing like, hey, look, it's okay. And then it sounds like, what was that like the first time? Because I'm imagining like putting myself into that scenario, like going through a panic or even anything, like going through anything that I feel a little shame around, and being there with an intimate partner and them seeing me go through this, me being open and vulnerable about it. Like it's not comfortable.
No.
And I'm practicing this in real time right now. And it's like, this week has been wild. But like, tell us about that journey for you. What is it like?
You know, what it's bringing up for me is like, there's two angles I want to come at it from. I mean, one is that the first time that ever happened, it wasn't intentional. It just happened. And it was hot shame. It was, I was warm. I was miserable. I felt like, oh, they finally found out that I'm worthless. Now they know my horrible secret that I'm actually a disgusting human being who has to like stim or cover my ears or cry when there's too much noise. And so it was like, I didn't really intend for that to happen. But I guess I just noticed that after the first time, I wasn't so scared about the second time. And part of it too was that after they witnessed me, I checked in and I was like, hey, I'm really embarrassed. I'm super sorry that like I got frustrated or like I had to leave. Like I sort of owned it and was like, I'm really sorry. And then I even named like, I am embarrassed. I am ashamed. And they said, you don't have to be embarrassed. We love you. Like, thank you for trusting. What they said, thank you for trusting me with that. And thank you for letting me know what you needed in that moment. It was not a burden for me to support you. And so I will say I have incredible people in my lives who are trauma informed, who are healers, who are, like really are doing the work. And we are building a safe place for all of us. Yeah. But so it's radical how much we love each other in this queer platonic space that we've created that allows for healing. But yeah, it took being witnessed without being it on purpose, and then owning that I was embarrassed, and then being told that I was okay repeatedly. And then the other thing it makes me think about is from like a BDSM angle, which is like, I love being pushed on my limits, including like being humiliated or being hurt or suspended or whatever when I've consented to it, because I like to prove to myself that I can survive hard things. And so it's like I could have planned an overwhelming moment to be witnessed. This was just an unplanned moment to be witnessed, if that makes any sense.
Yes. And the only difference between it being planned or not planned is you and your thoughts about it. It's not actually like the scenario is still the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's still being witnessed in a vulnerable state. It's just I didn't plan it.
I love to, like, I'm going to bring in the 3-step confident queer process that I talk about here, that I teach, right? You were practicing it in that moment. You were like, hey, okay, I am uncomfortable, right? And the very first step of the process is to be willing to be uncomfortable. And then you took the action of going and talking with your partners about like, hey, or roommates, sorry, right?
Yeah. They're roommates technically, but they're kind of like domestic partners unofficially.
Okay. So your roommates, you told hey, I'm really embarrassed. And like actually speaking up and sharing how we're feeling with another person is also really uncomfortable. It's so much nicer to just sweep it under the rug. But that does not build confidence. It does the opposite, because then we get to live in that little shame imaginary space that we set up for ourselves of like, I wasn't supposed to feel this way.
Yeah, and now they know I'm disgusting. So you like
Mm,
scuttle around the house and hide because you don't want to be seen because now everyone knows you're disgusting or whatever, you know?
right. Yeah. And then the third step is having your own back. And it sounds like really what you did, you just even going and speaking up, I know you had to in your mind ahead of time be like, hey, I'm willing to be seen here. It's going to be uncomfortable as hell, but I know what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to like sit here and shame myself over this crap anymore. I'm going to go have a conversation about it, and I'll have my own back.
Can I tell you what motivates me to do that?
Please do.
So it's actually I could not have achieved this without becoming a parent, especially a solo parent, because
Mm,
my entire being influences her framework for what kind of world she lives in. So if I'm even 10% more irritated that day, or 10% more ashamed, or 10% more tired, that trickles down to her.
mm,
And she does not need to hold that for me. So I need to find ways to mitigate that ahead of time.
mm.
So by sort of strategizing with my roommates around like, hey, I'm actually super frazzled from work today. Do you mind like taking Evie for a quick walk so that I can like just meditate?
Mm,
Because through the whole pandemic, and I mean this, the whole pandemic, it was her and me alone in an apartment, and I was not okay. And so
mm.
she and I are both somatically healing from the trauma of being isolated from community. And I still get activated and I still need help. And I don't want her to witness me suffering. I don't want her to witness me being angry. And so
Mhm,
if I'm going to sort of deal with my own tantrums before they come up, just like I do with
mhm.
hers, like that, my motivation to not pass my trauma onto her is why I take better care of myself. Because if I take better care of myself, I can take better care of her. And now she demonstrates that, and she's teaching 10-year-olds consent. Like it's amazing the kind of
Oh
emotional
my
intelligence and
God.
bodily autonomy she has. She's a dynamo. I love her so much.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Um, and the thing that stands out to me the most about that is the way you're speaking about it. I can tell it's from this place of responsibility, not of guilt. And I hear
Mhm.
a lot of parents adjusting their behavior around their kids and such because or making decisions about their kids or about their life or whatever out of guilt. Like, I don't want to fuck up my kid. And it's just guilt, 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 guilt driven. Yours
Right. And
is
that
so
makes it harder.
right. Yours
Mhm.
is so much more just like, hey, I am a responsible adult who wants to be able to give this experience the best I can to my kid. And I'm also going to do it imperfectly.
Mhm.
And it's going to be really uncomfortable, the whole process anyway. So
Yeah.
let's go.
And I will say that that guilt was like a big part of the first, I would say, year and a half.
Mm,
And that was what fueled the shame and what fueled the panic attacks and what fueled the anger was all of my guilt of my I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. Because when
yeah.
the person who abandoned me mid pregnancy told me that they were not going to be there, they told me I was going to fail. And
Mm,
I believed that story for a very long time. And I don't anymore. But that story like really hurt me a lot and created a lot of guilt. And when I finally confronted him and realized that I didn't need to believe the story he told me,
mm-hmm,
that set me free.
mm-hmm.
The guilt dissipated when I realized that he hadn't like he wasn't right, if that makes any sense.
Who wasn't right?
The person who told me I was going to fail.
Uh, yeah.
It was sort of like, as long as I believed that story, I sort of was failing because I was so guilty and ashamed and sad. And the
Mm-hmm,
second that I sort of wiped that story clean for myself and decided I was going to make my own story, that was when I decided I was going to take charge and I was going to be proactive and I was going to be responsible instead of guilty, like you say. But I
mm,
definitely lived in that guilt for a long time and hurt a lot from it.
yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is
Yeah.
really, really helpful, and um, what a great perspective to see. Like, okay, this is normal.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. All the things are like, it's so weird. I'm not allowed to feel this way. No, like,
Yeah.
that's normal. And then just it happens to be that most people are living their life faking it because they think if they can perform happiness or perform okayness,
Hmm.
um, perfection, then they might feel it. And it's the opposite. Like your story is such a testimony that the opposite is true.
Yeah. You have to be witnessed as imperfect in order to start to feel like you're actually okay.
Yeah.
uh, yeah, and I will say thank goodness for the times we live in where parents can like share resources and support for one another. Because if I hadn't heard from other parents who felt just as shitty as I did, and like they were just as big of a failure as I was, or felt like I was, like it was so good to know that almost all parents feel like they're failing all the time. And that like absolved me of some of my guilt. So I was like, oh, this is just part of it. I care so much. That's why I feel like I'm failing.
Tell us more about that.
Almost every parenting group, if you ever joined one, if you look at the messaging boards and stuff like that, it's all people saying like, why am I so bad at staying calm? Why am I losing my temper? Why am I overwhelmed by my kid? And it's like, because it's overwhelming to not sleep for 3 months and get yelled at and spit on and kicked and punched. And it's like somatically, physically, psychologically, and then especially like throw a pandemic, throw isolation on top of that. Like you're not supposed to be okay. Like if you're having a hard time and you're losing your shit in front of your kids, you're not alone. And then the best thing you can do, like if I lose my temper, I say, I'm sorry, Evie. I'm getting frustrated. I'm going to go take a time out. And then I go sit and I take a breath for however long I need. And I come back and I say, thank you for letting me have that space. I feel better now. Can I give you a hug? And then I've noticed if she has her own emotional outbursts, like I have had in the past, she demonstrates the same repair behavior. So losing the goal in parenting is not to never lose your shit. It's to show how do you lose your shit, keep your integrity, and then repair the relationship. And like, so I learned that from a million other parents, but that's not a Chuck original.
I feel like this though is every relationship in all of life. Definitely parenting, but like holy shit. That is like the magic sauce for every relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, can you own like where that's coming from? Like for me, if I'm getting activated in a conversation, I'll say, this is bringing up a wound for me that's like XYZ. And so it's not really about your behavior, but it's reminding me of this. And so I might need space before I can talk about it or whatever.
I love that. Okay. Do you have another scenario, like a practical scenario that you could tell us about where you've implemented that?
Like in adult relationships?
Sure.
I'm thinking about maybe my most recent breakup where I noticed that my partner and I had identified that we were sort of had an incompatibility in our lifestyles. And so it was sort of like the writing was on the wall for both of us. We could kind of see like, oh, long term, this probably isn't going to be a thing. But we tried to stay in relationship, but we kept hurting each other. And I realized, and so I kind of brought it up. I was like, can we just acknowledge that we're both experiencing grief from acknowledging our incompatibility? And can we just take some space to process our grief independently and then come back together as friends in like a month? Because they're dating my roommate and they are my friend. So it's like, I don't want us to just keep hurting each other over this grief. So I had to name the grief, acknowledge that I was being hurtful because I was hurting, and then decide to do something different with this person. And then we had a great agreement, and it's been good. I have faith that we'll get to come together as friends in a couple weeks.
What emotional maturity. Like, wow. I love it.
Yeah, polyamory sort of forces it because it's like once you're in community and all your friends are dating your friends and your partners, it's like if you're a dick, like you just hurt like 10 people.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. All right. So tell us more about that, about polyamory, and like, what is it like for you?
It's interesting because I always tell people who are new to polyamory, for the first 3 years, I was an asshole and I sucked at it. I thought everyone needed to take care of themselves and I didn't understand why everybody's getting their feelings hurt all the time. But it turns out that like, I just was not, one, negotiating appropriately what I could show up for. Two, I wasn't listening for what people were actually telling me. And I wasn't doing good repair. I just thought it was like every guy for himself out there in polyamory. And now I understand that it's about like building trust. And at least in my style, we do, there's kitchen table polyamory. We call it brunch polyamory because we always have brunch with our polycule, which is like,
Awesome.
and it's a fun weaving. Like I invite a friend over for brunch and then they start dating my metamor, and then they admit they have a crush on me. So now it's like, there's this weaving of our lives together. And it's, I would say polyamory is a practice of vulnerability, of honesty, of adaptability, and of loving people for whatever they need to do to take care of themselves and respecting that your worth is not based on another person's behavior, that is them taking good care of themselves. And I don't know. There's a lot of ways I could talk about polyamory, but that's what's coming up.
Okay, tell me more about the worth though. Like, I think this is a beautiful topic for today.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people will base their inherent worthiness on how their partners or friends or family treat them.
Totally.
And so like for me, there are certain things. What's a good way to frame it? I have a motto, which is I can't take it personally if you take it personally, which is like sometimes like if I need to set a boundary, it's super not about you. And you can take that personally, but that's between you and yourself, because I'm not saying that you're worthless. You're saying that you're worthless because I'm busy today. I'm just busy today. You're worthy all the time, 100% to me. But if you're the one telling yourself you're worthless, that's between you and yourself. And I can't actually fix that because I can support you. I can love you. I can affirm you. But if you believe you're unworthy and you're looking for me to like perpetuate that, like I can't show up for that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that absolutely does. So how you mentioned like the first 3 years were you were an asshole, you said.
I was really not good at
it. Tell us more. I'm curious, like, how did you realize that polyamory is the relationship style that you wanted to? Well, first of all, to you, is polyamory something that you're born with? Is it a decision? Like, how does someone come to that point?
I will say I find that I'm a naturally compersive individual, which means I tend to be happy when people I love are happy. So if people I love are falling in love, I tend to be happy. I don't know if I'm born with that, if that's part of my neurodivergence or whatever, but I don't tend to get jealous if my needs are met. I do get jealous if you tell me, no, I won't dance with you, but I'm going to dance with so-and-so. That's very hard. But if it's like, you just danced with me and then you just dance with so-and-so, like, cool. I actually don't feel bad about that. So I would say some people I think are more naturally compersive than others, and other people are more naturally maybe communication oriented, which can make it easier to be polyamorous if you're wired like I am, and that you're like allergic to dishonesty. Which, I mean, you can be in any kind of healthy relationship and, be honest. But I think in polyamory, honesty is especially crucial. For myself, I was introduced to it when I was 19 by a married man who was trying to convince me to go on a date with him. And I thought he was a horrible, disgusting cheater. And I was like, how dare you, sir? You think I'm a kind of person who would participate in that sort of disgusting, like, I hate cheating. I think it's horrible. So I was like, how dare you, sir? How dare you approach me? How uncouth. And then, he talked to me about it for a couple hours and explained, and then like showed like agreements that he and his wife had, and like assured me that all was well. And then, we started dating. I met his wife. They gave me the book, The Ethical Slut. I started to understand, like, how can you be in moral integrity and date multiple people? And so for me, it was just sort of like clear that made the most sense for me, because I'd always been in relationships and had lots of crushes and had been really like punished in those relationships for expressing those crushes. And I have just found that it was better for me if I was either single or dating people who didn't mind if I got coffee with someone cute, just to find out, are we going to write a thesis together? Are we going to build a house together? Are we going to smooch? Like, if I'm curious, I have to know. I'm relentlessly curious, and I need to be supported and loved in that. And if a person wants me to like temper that curiosity, it's just not going to be sustainable. I'm honestly like a little bit too, I have a little bit too much forward momentum. And so like, if you're going to slow me down, like you're probably just going to get ground up by the momentum. Like I've got things to do and places to go, and you either want to fan those flames or you don't.
Mm, I love this. Yeah. Okay. So tell us a little bit more what didn't work and
Mhm.
what is working now in polyamory.
I think, yeah, the big thing again that doesn't work is just like if you don't respect that I'm a curious person and I need to find things out, I all the time people will say that's not a good idea, and I'll say, I gotta know though. Like I'm the person that needs to investigate. And if it is a bad idea, I need to know why, and I need to know how bad of an idea it is. And that's just part of who I am. And if a person doesn't want me to do that and wants to restrict my behavior, it never works out. What does work is what we're starting to develop a language like autonomy first polyamory or relationship autonomous, where like my primary partner and I, we have a trust that we've built between each other. And we know if we don't hear from each other for a few days, or they're literally on the other side of the country right now, or if they go hang out with a friend and they end up having sex, like that's all fine. Like I trust that our core relationship isn't affected. So it's sort of like we don't need to ask each other for permission to explore things. We just sort of check in and say, hey, I was hanging out with so and so. We ended up having a great makeout session. And then we like high five about it
Mm,
because we're excited for the other person about a new connection, but we know that our connection isn't threatened. So I would say like
yeah.
having a really trusting bond allows for freedom for both individuals in a way that is really delightful
Okay,
in
so
my life.
I love this. I'm so curious. What then that bond, tell us more about that. Like because we've all grown up in this cult. Well, we've all.
Mhm,
I'm assuming most of our listeners have
mhm,
grown up in this American culture with romance and Disney and the diamond industry and
mhm,
Christianity and Catholicism, like all of these different things saying it's like the only way to have a deep, committed relationship with someone is to make them your exclusive sexual partner, right?
mhm.
And so what I love is that you're exposing like that. No, not true. So how does one have that
Mhm.
deep, intimate bond with your primary partner?
I think what was helpful for me going into this relationship is an understanding of attachment theory. Um, you've got your secure attachment, your anxious attachment, your avoidant attachment. And so I'm really closely attuned to my body, like through a lot of my spiritual practice. I notice somatically my reactions to things. And so I can
Mm-hmm.
feel if I'm pulling away or if I'm grasping or if I'm chill. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what has been so wonderful with my partner, Jared, is that we didn't intend to become like as deep of partners as we have. It's just sort of naturally gravitated towards that. And due to like, I think both Jared and I individually have secure attachments with ourselves and our
Mm-hmm.
communities, which allows us to show up for each other without any real expectation, but
Mm-hmm.
really just a giving and a sharing out of joy rather than necessity, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that whole you got to love yourself before you can love someone else thing is complicated, um, because I think it can be hard to have enough resources to love yourself if you don't have a family or a community or whatever. And I think a lot of us go to specifically monogamous partnership to get that affirmation or that safety. And I think
Right.
if you build that within your community, and by the way, I truly believe the best way to build security in your community is to be that secure someone for someone else. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you want to be able to lean on people, being the person people can lean on is really, really is a great way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that I've found to build that safety in my life.
I love that. So it's so interesting to me like that, you're saying it didn't even start out that way. It wasn't even really
Mhm.
intentional, and that you two came to this point of, oh, okay, um how did that even happen? Like how did you get to
Oh,
that point? I'm so curious.
so yeah, I think we met on Tinder, and they had posted that they were looking for someone to do kinky wrestling with.
Oh,
And
cool.
I love wrestling.
Yeah.
And so I messaged them, was like, LOL, I want to wrestle. And then we were going to meet up. And then the pandemic happened, but we stayed in touch on Instagram for a year.
Damn.
before we could meet up again. And then one day, I had put up something on my story about like wanting to hang out with a specific type of person, and they were like, "That's me." And so they came to my house wearing a mask, like basically interviewed to get into my like BDSM realm. And then
Love
we had to
it.
talk about like there's a framework I use called the stars talk. It's
Okay.
developed by Evelyn Dacker. Really, really crucial consent and relationship conversations. But basically, at the beginning, we were like, "Hey, this we're just going to be friends. We're going to explore some kinky fun together, but this isn't like he's going to move away in a few years, and he's not looking to like settle into anything." And so I think honestly, like having very minimal expectations at the beginning sort of allowed us to discover a compatibility that we didn't plan on, which I think is
Mm,
in some ways better for me than saying like, because I was looking for a co-parent and I was upfront about that. And he said,
mhm,
"I can't do that." But
mm.
now he helps with bedtime almost every single night.
Wow.
Yeah. Just because he loves it. And it's not
Yeah.
because he was obligated to, it's just because he gravitated that way slowly.
hmm hmm That's fantastic. Okay. And so then what do you think is the most you kind of said this already,
Mhm.
but what do you think is the most helpful thing for you both to
Mhm.
feel secure and committed in this relationship?
Mm. I
Period.
think
Like not period question mark.
this is something that I think I actually just developed words for today, which is
Mm.
that no one in your life, especially your partner, should be a single point of failure.
Oh,
You need redundancy,
yes.
you need fabric, you need dispersed needs met, because it's like my partner's in New York for the entire month. Am I going to collapse in a heap on the floor because I'm devastated and under resourced? No, I'm going to ask a friend to help with bedtime. I'm going to ask my roommate to help with bedtime. And it's not like I'm only asking one other person. I have a pool of 5 or 6. So if any one person is like, "Gosh, no, I don't feel good," or like, "Hey, I actually just got asked on a spontaneous date and I want to go," no one in my life is a single point of failure. Not me, not anyone. And in the pandemic,
Mm.
when it was me alone with my toddler, I was the single point of failure. I held it all.
Yeah.
And that was horrible. And I
Yeah.
never want to do that again. And I never want anyone in my life to feel like they have to do that either. I want that. I want my Jared to feel like he can leave for a month to take
Mhm.
care of himself, to follow his heart and his calling and do what he needs to do for him and know that I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That is beautiful. I'm like, "Oh my god, yes, yes." And it is so opposite of what I think most people are trying to do. I wonder if the reason that we like to have those single point of failure um in our lives with our relationships is because we think, "Oh, it gives me a sense of importance."
Mm-hmm.
If like I'm that person's everything, then like, yay, I'm so important, right? And like I don't know, I've never like thought of it that way before. I'm like, I think maybe that's probably what most people are walking around doing subconsciously. They're like, well, I get my sense of importance from you needing me, so like don't go anywhere else, don't have other friends. Like I need to be your one and only so I can be really important, and you can be my one and only so that you can be really important. And
Well, I don't know about you, but I grew up with a huge rescue fantasy. And
mm,
it was only very recently that someone said to me point blank, they were like, "Chuck, no one's coming to save you." And I was like, damn. I was like, I didn't expect it to, but your words just literally set me free, because I have been out here begging someone to save me my entire life. And in the
mhm.
last year and a half, I have decided to save my own ass. Like I was like, okay, I've been sitting in this puddle for 30 years. Nobody's coming. I guess I got to stand up and clean myself up. And it's been so empowering and so great to just like realize that like, wow, actually no one's coming. And I actually didn't even need them. I just believed I did. So I never got up out of this mud puddle.
Preach.
Yeah.
So good.
But that's
Yes.
the other problem is like with monogamy, it's tied into that. Like I have to find this person who's going to save me from my loneliness, from my unworthiness, from my
Yeah.
blah blah blah. Like I'm sorry, but you do have to save yourself. And guess what? You actually can. And then once you realize, like truly actualize that you can save yourself, like then you can start helping other people do that too. Because it's like, it's not bad if someone gives you a hand to get up out of that puddle,
Right.
but they're not going to pull you out and then support your body for the rest of your life.
Yeah, no. Right. Yeah. And it
It's like,
is important to be open to receiving that hand and
yes.
being open to receiving support,
Mhm.
and also knowing that they are not your one and only, that like
Mhm.
you are your if- your core one and only,
Mhm.
and you have many around to support.
Yeah. And it's like, if I do fall down or even start to wobble, now I have community around me to help me through those wobbly times.
Yeah.
But I had to go out and get that. I had to make that.
Right. Right. Which is so much more effort than just going out and finding that one single person and being like, great, here we are.
Mhm.
We're done. Which was great in like the olden days
Mhm.
of
But even then, those
arranged
type of
marriage
communities,
and such.
but they had multi-generational family and church.
Yeah.
They weren't alone. It's only in the last 50 years that Americans have decided that we all need to be alone in our McMansions. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah.
That rugged individualism. It's like, I think you're just lonely.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. But yes, nothing to add.
Yeah, that's the tweet.
That's it. I was like, nope, period, the end. Okay. Is there anything else around shame in polyamory too that came up for you? Because I feel like those are our primary things today. I feel like is shame and
I guess there's something I want to talk about with like shame and achievement.
okay, go
Um,
for it. Let's do it.
yeah, so I read this book this year that really changed my perspective. It's called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And
Yes.
yeah, and so it's basically about how like we will undermine ourselves if we get too close to being successful, and because most of us have some barrier to success. And for me it was like this feeling of I don't want to outshine others, because as a child, by being the like student of the week all the time, I got my shit rocked. People beat me up and nobody was my friend. And so like I have this narrative of like, if I overachieve, then no one will love me because I'll be too
Mm-hmm.
annoying or whatever. And the thing I've come to realize is that like the dreams and the things that I want to see in the world, I really have to make those happen. And I'm going to have to accept that not everyone's going to understand or appreciate what I'm doing, but I know within myself what I'm here to do, what my values are, what my motivations are. And now, like destroying the shame around that, destroying shame around money. Like a big thing I've been working through with wealth is like, I make six figures now and
Mm-hmm.
I'm climbing, like I'm trying to crack a 250,000 this year. That's my goal. And
Amazing.
and I'm on my way.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, I would have been like, ew, I don't want to ask for more than $15 an hour because I'm not worth it. But now I realized, here's the thing. People who are already privileged are just going to keep collecting those big fat salaries if we don't go out and take them. So it's like I have plenty of privilege, but not as much privilege as some people who tend to get those salaries. And I'm trying to open as many doors as possible for people to get to those opportunities. And the biggest
Yes.
thing we have to overcome is believing we deserve it.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And with money and with light, that you talked about like, oh, I'm going to outshine other people.
Mhm.
The thing is, both of those fears are based on an assumption that there's a limited amount
Of
of
scarcity. Yeah.
money, yeah, and a limited amount of light. Like,
Mhm.
no, it's not possible to take money from other people. The facts of money too are there's nothing physically backing it up anymore. It's
It's all made up. Just
all
go get
just a
it.
mental construct. So it actually like even if you're struggling with it from you know you're like, well, I need more evidence. Like you have all the evidence you need. Like it is a fact that there isn't a limited amount. We
Mhm.
just can print more anytime the government wants to print more. So
Well, and it's like we have this narrative around like, oh, like money's gross, capitalism's gross, jobs are gross. It's like, yeah, true. But like for me, I think I just kind of utilized it's I'm working on what I want to say because I do know like people I work with will listen to this. But the truth is that no one, okay, I have a job. I am hired. I am
Yeah.
salaried. I worked for myself for 10 years. I
Yeah.
still work for myself.
Yeah.
And like, I am always going to protect my well being. And like, I am going to protect my worth.
Hmm.
And like, some days I work 2 hours and some days I work 10.
Yeah.
And both of the days I am just as valuable. I don't need to overwork myself to justify this 6-figure job. Like, I'm just worth it. And like we were saying, money's made up. And there is no lack of opportunity.
Hmm.
I feel like I had more of a point, but I think I got embarrassed about it and shut it down because I don't want coworkers to hear it.
That's totally fine.
I think
Well,
if I was gonna like coyly talk about it, I would say I'm utilizing my kink mindset to enjoy the gross parts of capitalism. I'm having fun with
yes. Yes, yes, yes. I love that. Even the thing. Preach.
Yeah, that's
if y'all are trying to figure out, like, okay, wait, what the hell is Chuck talking about with the kink mindset? Go listen to the episode called Kink. This is exactly like we are on the same page here. Just go listen to that episode and you'll understand it. But the same thing is true of light, right? And like not outshining other people. Like it's just not a thing. You're not, there's not like, oh, and I've now taken the spotlight away from others. No, it's you are being more light yourself, which actually is shining away for others. So actually the truth might be, instead of I'm going to outshine them and they can never progress and other people can never progress in their life, actually if I shine brighter, more people might shine brighter too. So
and it might even be from a competitive place. And if so, like,
be.
come for me, bitch.
Right. Because that is fun.
I dare you.
I love to compete. It's not a bad thing. Like, come on, let's go at it, right? And like from a place of love, like it's not like I'm better than. Although
it's like a game, fun.
Right, exactly. And those intrusive thoughts come to me sometimes still of like, oh my God, they're better than me. And it's like, no. They're not. We are the same. We are all just humans. Same even playing field. And yet, totally uneven playing field. There's no such thing as
super uneven,
field. Like,
yeah,
we're all human. We're all unique.
Level.
Right. We all have different experiences. We all have different DNA. We all have different everything. And that's not a problem. Let's go compete. Come on, bitches. Let's go.
Yeah, let's race. Let's see. Like that's been my thing so I have a friend who we've actually just been competing on salary. And she was like, haha, you out earned me for 2 weeks, bitch, but I just got a raise. And I was like, I'm coming for you. I was like, just wait what I've got in store this year. So it's like healthy, friendly competition.
I love that.
Yeah, it's like, it's really fun.
That is, yes, that also, is like, go ahead.
The other thing I'll say is it's okay to be delusional as long as you're having fun with it and you're not hurting anyone. Like, I don't really know if I'm going to crack $250,000, but I'm sure as hell going to try and I'm going to have fun getting there. I'm going to be audacious and I'm going to be bold and I'm going to try.
I love it. I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to hear. I actually set my goal this year for just over 200,000 for my business, which is crazy because I haven't even hit 100 before. So we're like gonna fucking leapfrog this. And also I'm not gonna go like throw a pity party if I don't hit it, but I love to have ridiculous, crazy goals and like, let's go.
So last year I started unemployed, making $1,500 a month myself, like self-employed. My goal was to make 80K by the end of last year. I cracked 140.
Oh my God. Yes.
So what could come up this year? I have some wild projects in place. I have some schemes and dreams where I'm curious.
I think we're both going to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious.
We're going to have a lot of fun trying.
Exactly. I'm curious for you. Like this is the last thing and then we'll kind of wrap up, but I know for me the way that I go and approach my goals now is one from that fun standpoint that we were talking about, but also like I'll set it and I'll plan it out and I'll be like, okay, this plan kind of makes sense, and throw the plan away. Like I'm open to letting the universe now offer this to me in any way. I've done the math. I know it's possible, but the how and the exact steps, the ones I made up are not going to be the ones that work. I know that.
You can start with the first step and see if you can get there, and then see what you see from that step.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you?
I would say, yeah, I'm somewhat similar in that I'm very unattached to I honestly, like, some of the goals I have for things I want to see in the world, like in terms of technology or art, it's sort of like if I mention it to someone and they go run and make it so, like, I'm not going to be mad that that thing exists now.
Yeah.
But it's like I can only do things one step at a time. And oh, well, okay, here's the best way to put it. Are you familiar with the concept of the mountain that Neil Gaiman has talked about?
I don't know. Tell it, and maybe.
Yeah. So the mountain is like your faraway goal. Like, let's say, okay, I do want to have a 4-hour work week. That's my mountain.
Okay.
And so whenever I take a step in any direction, I ask myself, is this a step towards my mountain or away from my mountain?
Okay.
And if it's a step away from my mountain, I don't do it. If it's a step towards, I do. And so that's sort of can be a loose intuition to guide you about those steps. But it's like, I don't know how many streams I'm going to cross or bridges or things I'm going to have to climb to get to that mountain. I just have my eyes fixed on that thing that I know to be true. Mm-hmm. And I'm just sort of casually sauntering, exploring, turning over stones on my way to that mountain.
Love that. Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
That is such a great concept. I'm loving it. All right. My friend, what else do we want to say? I want you to be able to like share your information and links and everything in a moment, but like, is there any like parting words or last like nugget of gold wisdom that you want to give to everyone today?
There are 2 phrases that I would like to invite people to meditate on. Okay. And those 2 phrases are: stay curious. Don't ever make up your mind about something 100%. Stay curious. And 2, rest in abundance. There is enough. There is enough. The earth inherently is benevolent and creative, and you are made of the earth. And if we can lean into that benevolent, creative energy of the earth and embody it and nurture it, we're all going to be fine. But we got to stop burning it down.
Damn.
That's all. Just that.
That's it. Just that. When I said gold, you really brought the gold.
Yeah.
So good.
I take no ownership for any of these. These are all straight from the earth through my mouth.
I love it. Okay, so you coach as well, right? So
sort of. Yes. I passively coach. I don't really actively coach anymore. I'm really in my corporate space, loving it. I do poetry, I do performances and speaking, but I don't coach that much anymore.
Okay. Well, where can our listeners find you? Because they want to just go and soak up your delicious energy and just bathe in all that is you.
So you're just going to want to Google Chuck Copenspire. That's Chuck, and then Copenspire, Copenspire. You'll find all of my stuff. I'm the only Chuck Copenspire there is. There's TikToks, there's YouTubes, there's everything you could dream of. Just if it's all under my name.
Yep, and we'll have it linked up in the show notes as well for you all, so you don't have to go far. So wonderful! Oh my God, my friend, thank you so much for being here today. What a great conversation. So enlightening. I took so much out of this conversation. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for making time and for giving me an opportunity to speak to your audience.
Of course. Of course. All right, my friends. I will see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend so they too can become more confident. You can also help more people find the show by leaving a 5-star review wherever you listen. And if you want to become a more confident queer with support from yours truly, head to coachalexray.com or use the link down in the show notes. I'm looking forward to working with you.